In this episode of the Stop Doing Stuff podcast, hosts Andreas and Tim Keefe dive into the challenges of deploying generative AI in organizations, inspired by a recent article by Rachel Curry on CNBC. Joined by special guest Dr. Amy Goetze, a seasoned data analytics expert, the trio explores the critical role of data readiness and governance in AI success. From practical strategies to hilarious insights on data hygiene, they discuss how organizations can overcome data silos and improve AI outcomes. Whether you're an AI enthusiast or a data skeptic, this episode delivers valuable takeaways and entertaining banter.
Hey everybody, welcome to another great way to start your day, listening to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. I am here with some random guy that showed up, Tim Keefe, per the Zoom, and we have a special guest today. But Tim, let me not get too far ahead of ourselves. You want to do an introduction for us and let us know what we're going to be bantering about today?
Yeah, thank you, sir, my fellow co-conspirator here. Yeah, one of the things that caught my attention this previous week was an article by Rachel Curry in CNBC that was published on the 13th of November. It's not a new topic, but I think she did a really good job in a very concise way of talking about one of the challenges of implementing artificial intelligence. And I bring this up in light of our recent conversations about employee experience, employee return to office, hybrid, work from home, 4-day weeks. And the reason why I think they tie together is AI is often used as either the club or the enabler to support whatever business model you happen to be talking about. It's often used as like, oh, AI is going to allow us to let go of hundreds of people that are doing repetitive tasks in our organization, and we can slide that over to AI very quickly and have a better experience for our customers at a lower cost. Yet, and a year and a half, almost 2 years after the AI hype really got launched, at least I'm not aware that there's been any massive, significant implementation of AI to accomplish what I just described. So what I wanted to do today was discuss the article, and because at least I'm really not that smart, I wanted to bring somebody really smart on this topic into the conversation. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Amy Goetze, who got a PhD in data analytics and is a long-term friend that I've worked with on a variety of projects, and just really excited to have you here, Amy, and thank you for making time to join us today.
Happy to be here.
So, Amy, I know you had a chance to take a look at the article, and as you think about your experience and the decades that you spent working with data in large corporations, I mean, just what are some of your first thoughts as you read through what Rachel had to say?
Well, I think Rachel did a great job of sort of pulling forward an issue that we've actually dealt with for many years. And it's just, showing itself again in the generative AI space. And that is, you're only as good as your data is good. And making data good is something that is very difficult and something that corporations in general have not spent a ton of time doing over the years. And it's been a problem for data analysts for years. It's been a problem in business intelligence and big data. And when you're trying to put tools on top of data, if your data is not clean, well-defined, well-governed, you can get answers that you're not expecting. Well, lo and behold, we're seeing the same thing with generative AI, which, I think if you think about it, isn't all that surprising, and yet something that sort of perhaps a barrier towards the true adoption of the real capabilities of generative AI.
Well, and I think the scary part in the old days, if you had no answer, you literally got no answer, right? Or you got an incomplete message. But the problem with generative AI is it gets into this, well, if I don't know it or I can't find it, let me make up something that sounds like it. And so the hallucinations, while we laugh about them, actually quite dangerous, I think. And as we talk about, some of the applications that are, being developed, like home healthcare, it's a great application, right? You think about the idea of like, I'm a home health aide or a family member, and, I'm dealing with another family member who needs help, maybe because whatever their situation is, and now something's happened, right? They passed out, or they're incoherent, or they're angry, or whatever. And I go to this tool, and I'm expecting that I'm going to get the right answer. And do we get the right answer? Or what's the level of accuracy that's acceptable? Because if I do something as a result of that guidance that's wrong or even possibly deadly, who's responsible? I don't know. It's kind of fascinating. And I love some of the elements in here about, how to get that data to that point, accepting the fact that data is often in silos in organizations. What we found in doing a lot of projects around data hygiene or data governance for businesses is that particularly with all these different cloud applications, whether you're talking Salesforce or HubSpot or Google Analytics or Zendesk or Zoho, and the list goes on, right? You've ended up now with these silos within organizations where different groups are using different cloud applications that sometimes call things that use the same name.
Yep.
But the underlying calculation or source of that data, or even the attributes of that data, may be wildly different. And the confusion or the problem is that, I run a generic report across all of these systems and pull out all the data elements that might say customer sentiment. And you're like, but what is it telling me? Because what I'm getting at the end doesn't make sense. And the problem is, well, that customer sentiment is calculated 5 different ways between these 3 systems. So you can't use that as a single data attribute or data. It's not the same data, even though it bears the same name. So
Right.
anyway.
Well, between hearing you two real quick, I gotta chime in because I'm pretty excited here. I think I just came up with what is 100%. I'm gonna see if I can maybe copyright or trademark this, Tim. Original idea, 100%. I'm declaring it right now, 100% original. My idea between what both of you are saying right now, I have a new phrase. 100% original. It's never been used before. Garbage in, garbage out. All right. I'm gonna trademark that.
Yeah,
It's
go
not
for
like
it.
it's not like a term that's been around for like 20 or 30 years before the term Gen AI was even invented or uttered. Garbage in, garbage out.
I think it's even older than formal electronic computing, but only because I was around for that, I might suggest that. But I think it would be a good exercise to submit that to the US Patent Office and see what you get. You might actually get a patent for it if nobody else has ever done it.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm joking on it, but like what you guys are saying, you're spot on. It goes back to this. It precedes Gen AI, right? And all the hype cycle that's around Gen AI right now. And what I think it does, unfortunately, is it hinders the ability for good practical application of Gen AI. And then Amy, you're spot on with getting mass adoption with it. I think they're overcomplicating it and trying to apply it in too big of a way when the underlying mechanisms that enable it to be accurate, not just hallucinate but be accurate, it's completely
Yeah.
flawed. It's unhygienic. And instead
Well,
of trying to look at like a chat GPT 4.0, and like look, there's a lot of good things that come out of it, but that large language model that it's looking at is massive. And if you're a company, a lot of I'm not going to speak disparagingly against anybody, and hopefully it doesn't come out this way, but folks that I've talked to in large companies they're under the impression, and this is usually on the business side, by the way, they're under the impression that they can just take a model like that and drop it on top of their, in their infrastructure, and it's going to work like that.
we have great examples of it. I mean, there are those that lawyer or lawyers who wrote a brief with ChatGPT when it first came out, and it started hallucinating case citations, one of which happened to be quoted to the judge in the case who had never been involved in it, and they got caught. And so, to your point, that you can't just say, I'm going to take this large language model that is the internet and say that's going to be my data source. And this is no different than you and I, as in our contact center operations days, would say, I've got to have solid, available, usable knowledge base for my human agents, right? Not an AI agent, but a human agent, in order to go and reference to make sure that I'm providing the right information to my customer. In fact, operationally, we used to get really annoyed when we see people with a lot of yellow, Post-it notes in their cube because they're not referencing the knowledge articles. Or even worse, the knowledge base becomes garbage because nobody's actually cleaning it up and removing old articles, et cetera. So I'm not trying to say it's the same problem, but there are a lot of similar elements to it, which is that you've got to know where you're going to go for the data. It's got to be a data set that is accurate and complete. And the tools have to be designed through the prompt engineering to get to the same consistent, accurate answer every time. So,
Yeah. No, I do. I kind of see it that same way. And like, look, there's a lot of different applications that companies can look at and how they would apply it, whether it's holistically at the like entirety of the internet that it's going to search. And that's where I think some of the hallucination starts to come in. But if you ring fence what it's looking at, and again, you look at it in a more practical way, which is more around, let's just say a simple use case would be something like company policy and procedure, then that
mhm,
also means that everything that you ring fence, the data that you ring fence around, that can be employee manuals, that can be company, I don't know, any kind of company policies or knowledge base articles, learning management system, content, etc. You got to make sure it's hygienic. You got to make sure it's clean. And to Amy's point earlier, that companies haven't even been able to keep up with that before Gen AI was around. So I think, in this conversation, it's great. You and I were going to talk forever, but Amy, given we have you on here, I really want to get your opinion on what is a very like practical place that our listeners and in their organizations and companies, where do you think that they could look at that is, I don't want to say low effort, but like a better, more focused effort that they could start to see some better results if they are trying to go after just good, I don't even want to say Gen AI, but just good data governance.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a huge question. And I don't know that I think this is a great question for all of us. I'm not sure I've seen anyone do it really well. My experience is in larger corporations, and it's harder there, obviously, because you have multiple data sources you're mapping across. But I mean, I think the key thing, and this has been the same thing again back from a long time ago, is if you understand what the questions you're trying to answer are, and you can focus just on that data and make sure that's the clean set of data, then there has to be somebody in a corporation who's responsible for keeping that up to date. You were just talking about policies and procedures. Even that, those are expired, replaced, and I was back in the age where, we had them all in a manual and you had to pull it out and put the new one in. Someone's got to be responsible for doing that. So having sort of a data champion in an organization who's trying to start leveraging, I would say data analytics, Gen AI, any of these things, having a data champion or a data governor, I mean, is a great first step. Someone who's really going to be responsible for ensuring the cleanliness of the data that you're using for critical business decisions. I don't know if that was the question you were
Yeah.
asking.
No,
but
that makes logical sense to me.
well, and it's actually interesting because in the article and I want to keep going back to it because I think, and she did a good job. They talk about the fact that, well, data governance isn't new, but with Gen AI now, maybe it becomes even more complex because, again, you're not looking at this conditional logic decision tree stuff and how they get to the answer. And then the model is going to be constantly asking for new data. One of the other things I thought was interesting in there was the comment about that she mentioned, or in the article I mentioned, the need for that data governance executive or people with data governance fields of expertise within the organization. Because one of the things that Andreas and I have been talking about too is as new technologies come in, what do we think about for the new alt skilling that people need to be thinking about as maybe their job does come under stress from automation tools. Wow, you look at this article and it's like so much opportunity around data annotation, data governance models, even at junior levels all the way up through senior level executive places where this thing that was just kind of like, hey, that was the BI team, or that was that was not really day-to-day stuff. Now it's the grease, it's the fuel that your business runs on.
Right.
And people still don't pay enough attention to it. It's still like that's a geeky thing. We don't need to worry about it.
Right. And where I have seen it even tried, it's sort of an add-on to someone's job. It can't be an add-on to someone's job if you want your data to really feed these things appropriately. Right? That needs to be their focus. I loved in the article where she was talking about, there are different layers of your data, right? There's some data you don't want that you may want HR only seeing, and so you need that to have a different security level. And
Oh,
all of that to be sort of underneath this data model, right? It's like this needs to be segregated and
Sure.
only used when the user can access that data, right?
Well, all you can imagine is some customer service interaction. And because the data is, to your point, kind of in a giant pool behind the scenes, and the AI, because of the way it works, the Gen AI tool actually sucks up some PII and
Yep.
puts it back out to the customer, like not intentionally, but it's kind of like the old days when, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to tell you guys our entire salary or, the pay slips for this last month got sent to an all organization email. So now
Right.
everybody knows what everybody got paid, which is never a good day. But no, so if, Amy, in your role or, in your experience, your role, I mean, I always think of you as my data guru when I have questions in this space. If you were to boil it down to maybe one or two things, or even one statement that you would tell organizations that they need to bring forward, what would it be? If they're going to go down this AI path, which everybody is going to go.
Oh, well, I mean, it has to be around, your first step is data, right? You've got to identify the data you need and make sure it's clean, the right data. And I would love it segregated from the data that you don't want in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, that is got to be the first step in my mind towards any analytic or Gen AI kind of work, is make sure your data is clean and ready to go, and that you have a process for maintaining it, because the model is going to want to come back and retrain, and you need to make sure that it's maintained. I guess I should add that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the article called out that idea of measuring, right? And, measuring readiness, cleanliness, but also accuracy, I guess, accuracy of answers. Yep. And I don't know that a lot of AI implementations think of that. I mean, if it was humans, we would be measuring the crap out of them.
That's true.
And I would go back, Amy, I think, to what you said about getting that right person. I think that right person, and it's a dedicated person. It's not they're the data analyst now, or they're on the data team, so let's slot them into this role. I mean, if they have the capabilities, then yes, but they got to be dedicated to exactly what you just said. Let them come in and understand all of the siloedness in the organizations and the disparate data sources and data capture mechanisms that are there, ingesting all of that in to make it usable and hygienic. That's where it all kind of starts. And as much as we want to flip a switch on Gen AI and it magically does all that, that's not reality. It doesn't work like that. It's a person. And I think that person with the right responsibilities in the right direction and the right autonomy, by the way, to go converse with the business side, to converse with infosec side, like you guys, both rightly brought up around information security and making sure the right information is only shared with the right level of user access, et cetera. That person, I think, is the conduit that allows for a maintenance or a hygiene schedule, right? To your point, Amy, that the data is clean and usable, but they also get informed, inputs from the key stakeholders and the other disparate groups that all make up and produce this data or capture this data in, some way, shape, or form. I think if organizations start realizing that is an actual role that's needed to have proliferation of Gen AI, and just start with data in general and then mature up to Gen AI practical use and beyond practical use, I think that one person's got to be, celebrated and prominent in the organization and given the autonomy and support they need to be successful. I think if they make that small investment, whether you're a small or medium company or a large enterprise level company, if you start there, I think you're going to start to see results, and you follow through on that. You'll start to see results that are more encouraging, that allow for, stepping forward. And it is just steps. It's not leaps, it's steps forward in maturing your data maturity practice and Gen AI application practice. Did all that make sense, or am I
It made it
also
you said
hallucinating?
You said it a whole lot better than I did. Thank you, Andreas.
Well, see, that's what I do. I'm really good at listening to smart people, and then I just repeat what they said, and then I take credit for it. And you busted me, right?
Well, this is such a key. I mean, I don't think this is a one-off conversation. I think this is a never-ending conversation about how do you operationalize what we just talked about? Because to the point that you made, this is not one and done, right? Like you don't do a project and say, okay, data's ready, done. Everybody goes back to their regular job and we use this data set. No, we've got to be constantly, because the data is going to be constantly updated.
Yep.
And are we paying attention to it? Are we paying attention to the accuracy, the use, and the result of whatever these inquiries are, whether they're internal, external, whatever they might be? So again, I really appreciate both your time in obviously a topic we care a lot about, because I was kind of over talking here a little bit, but Amy, really, really appreciate your time and energy on this. And anybody on the call who is very interested in understanding more about data structures and data analytics, please let us know. We'd love to engage with you. And Amy is a key resource for us and part of what we're doing here. Also, please take the time to subscribe. As we're probably aware, we're in both YouTube and Spotify, and we'd love to see more subscribers here with us. Would you guys like to close out with anything as we say goodbye to our listeners? Andreas?
I'm just going to throw down, hey, garbage in, garbage out, 100% original idea from me. So make sure you give me props for that. If it's genius.
No problem. It's all yours, my friend. How about you, Amy? Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
No, just a big thank you for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope to talk to you guys again soon.
All right, Amy. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everybody.